Yeah, let's just do that.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this momentous, well-stocked meeting with food and people. I'm glad you could all make it. Could I have a motion to accept the minutes of April 23rd?
Mr. Chair.
Is there a second? Any corrections or omissions? Not hearing any. Sylvia, do you want to do both a roll call and approval on minutes?
Yes, I really do.
Excuse
let's
me,
start-
Sylvia,
Yes.
it still looks like that Read AI is up there.
Do you see something, Tammy? I don't see it.
As a person,
Oh, this thing.
yeah. Oh,
I
it moved.
it
I can-
moved.
I can remove them if that's a consensus.
Let's remove. No
Okay.
one's identified that. Yeah, it's creeping me out a little.
Okay, they have been removed.
And
I don't know who Dan's iPhone is either.
and yeah, also for our group online, our virtual group, we'd like Dan's iPhone. Could you just identify yourself so we can have that as the minutes?
Dan Heath with the town of Bedford.
Thank you so much for that. That's appreciated. And somebody's got a really fun, not mentioning any names, Art. All right. There are a few guests in the room as well. Please help yourself to pizza and all the excitement. This is a celebration day, so welcome everyone for those who I don't happen to know and those who I know. So let's start as Peter has requested. Let's go with our voting members. Chris Sterndale in Auburn is here. And that was a hello and wave hand. From online, we have from Bedford, we have Dan Heath. Dan?
Yes, hello, present.
Present, right, and then well, okay, abstain, we're doing meeting minutes. And people keep coming in online, so I may miss someone, but try to keep up. From Candia, we have in-house one of our newest members, so welcome. Ron Laverdure, Ron, is that sort of correct?
That's correct.
Oh, thank you, and welcome, let's give Ron a round of applause for being here.
Yay.
Member, we love a new member from Candia. From Chester in-house, we have Andrew Haddock.
Present. Aye.
And online from Chester, we have Deb Munson.
Here and approve.
Thanks, Deb. In Deerfield, we have Errol Rhodes here today.
Yes.
Thank you, Errol. From Derry, we have Jeff Moulton.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Jeff. John O'Connor.
Here and abstain.
Thank you, John. And Richard Tripp.
Here and yes.
Thank you. From Francistown, in the house, we have Gary Schneckenberg,
Present and yes.
and we have Al Eisenberg online.
Here and yes.
Thank you. Let's see, from Goffstown in-house, we have Joanne Duffy. Here and abstain. So good to have you. Barbara Griffin. Here, yes. She didn't freak me out this time. Jacob LaFontaine.
Here and yes.
Thank you so much. Did I miss anyone so far from any of the communities? Looks good. Well, now comes Londonderry. We have Brian Battaglia online.
Here and abstain.
Thank you. Also Deb Levens.
Present and approve.
Okay, great. Not seeing anyone else from Londonderry. From Manchester.
Here, Sylvia.
Oh, darn it. Art Rug, of course, we're talking German earlier. How can I forget Art? Thank you. And here and
Here and yes.
yes, thank you. Manchester, we have Dan O'Neill.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Dan. And Kevin Shepherd, our next new member. Thank you. And that applause also is for Bill Jean, who is just coming in from Bedford here, and
Yes, and present.
thank you.
No applause. All right.
Yeah, from New Boston, we have Mark Sunin in the house.
Here and yes.
No one here from where, from Wyndham, we have our chair, Peter Griffin,
Obviously here and yes.
and we have Ed Lapointe.
Here and yes.
Online, another MPO member, we have Lucy St. John.
Okay.
Finding
Good
that,
afternoon, everyone. I have to get back to it. Good afternoon. I abstain.
thank you, Lucy. And we have several voting members and guests. I'm just going to say welcome to everyone because we have a really packed house. Thank you for the wave, Colin and Beverly Donovan. There's so many different people here today. There's Craig. And in-house, we have Rick, and we have just first name.
Eliza.
Eliza's here.
She's another new person.
Eliza,
Eliza, oh, Eliza from Manchester, thank you so much. You got an applause for being here and new, and we welcome you. Okay,
are you okay, Sylvia?
I'm good.
Made it through.
I made it, and there's Becky. Thank you, Becky from Bedford. Lots of guests, and all to celebrate George.
Yes. I'd like to take a moment to honor some individuals who are no longer with us. Charlie Farnham, Fairman from Bedford, Brent Armstrong from New Boston, and Martin Shujas from Londonderry, who were very important commissioners in the past who are no longer with us. So let's have a moment of silence for them, please. Thank you so much for their service. Okay, our new business guest, 40 years of planning. Sylvia, would you like to handle this one, or do we?
I will handle this, although I think my friend Nate would be more eloquent. I will just say, I have prepared nothing, obviously, so I apologize for that. But I know that we all have been so grateful to George for all these years of support. He's participated in CART, in the commission, in the on the TAC, well before my time, because he's been at this for 40 years. And since I've only been in this seat for, I don't know, 7, and then deputy is 2, but just so grateful for George. We were debating on, and we have one more from Deerfield, when we were talking about June and what to have on our agenda. And I know, you know, in passing by George now and then and in different meetings, I thought, I know exactly what we're going to do for our June agenda. We're going to celebrate an individual who's persevered in one position for 40 years. And I just think that is such an amazing commitment to one community. So without further ado, you'd much rather hear from George. So thank you, George, so much.
You want me to get upstairs? Want me to step here?
Yeah, right over here.
Want me to sit?
I do, right over
I didn't
here.
prepare anything like Sylvia and I discussed, so I'm better just talking because I like to chat, and if you want to ask questions, but thank you, Sylvia, and thank you. Fred McGarry, I just want to say, Fred was one of the first people from Deerfield that I met in 1984. Fred was doing a lot of work with the town back then. So here we are 40 years later and seeing some of the same people in the room here. So I really appreciate everybody. I started here, as I told Sylvia, Gary back in 1984 had a town meeting form of government. There was no planning position. I was 25 years old, right out of college. My first job ever was advertised as entry-level position. I was from Rhode Island. I had gone to school down there, so I applied for a job when you still had to go to the libraries and go to newspapers and look for wanted ads. So I saw a position for the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. They wanted someone with 2 years' experience, entry level. Moni Sharma, rest his soul, was the director back then. So I sent a resume in, I got a rejection letter, you know, he said we just needed somebody with more experience. So about 2 months after that, this was the spring, I got a call I was living with my parents after college for a little bit. I got a call from the selectman's office in Derry from Town Hall saying if I was interested in a planning position. I didn't know who they were, I didn't apply for Derry, I really didn't know Derry. I came up to New Hampshire on vacations, but they said, well, there's a planning position, and I said, well, how did you get my resume? And Moni Sharma said he took a few resumes from the planning commission position, forwarded to the town administrator of the selectmen in Derry, and I came up for the interview, and I was offered the job. It was entry level. I had no really practical experience other than I did an internship for a semester in a planning department where I grew up, and then I had the college experience. But for those of you who remember, Derry in New Hampshire was one of the fastest growing states in the country, not just New England in the 80s. It was mostly housing development. And I got myself into this situation where I wasn't sure, like, this is what I wanted to do. And then I had two people, well respected in the community, Judge Grinnell, if you hear the name Judge Grinnell. He and his family were from Derry, well connected politically, as well as Ben Adams. When you come into Derry, you see the Adams building in downtown Derry. They were again politically connected. And I remember I came close to quitting. They were very nice to me. They walked in my office with me and they said, Judge called me kid. He said, kid, I like you personally. He said, but I didn't support your planning position because town meeting voted for the position back then. And he said, I don't believe in planning. He said, I don't like the government telling you what property owners can do with their land. So I kind of felt like, what am I doing here? Did I get in? Why did I do this? But I stuck with it. And then here we are all these years later. So I said to Sylvia, I've kind of seen it all in terms of development. It's going full circle. I've had great planning board members. I know John O'Connor was our chairman. Dave Bernessi's been here. Dave's on the planning board, a great chairman, and supported John O'Connor as well. So I got involved with the planning commission. Jim Tethers, who some of you may remember, Jim helped me a lot. He was the planner under Moni Sharma. I relied on his expertise a lot to help me with some zoning things because we're still learning it. Trying to think what else I've been through 4 master plans. Dave Cameron's here. Dave's probably one of the best administrators. I'm not just saying that in my career. I've been through, I think we've been through 15 town managers, administrators, board of selectmen, interim police chief, interim fire chief, 3 mayors. I've had 3 mayors. So I've kind of seen it all. But I think that one of the things that Derry, being on the 93 corridor, we're a high growth town even to today. So I think we try to look at the growth issues we had, and we implemented a growth management ordinance back in the 90s. That capped the number of permits you could do every year, and as well as phasing developments. And then we try to focus in. The other major thing was the downtown revitalization. As you drive through Derry, it's kind of gritty, but in a good way. And I mean this in a good way. It's really come a long way. There's a lot of activity and shops downtown. There were several downtown committees I was involved with. There was proposals to tear down the Opera House. That building has been saved, and there's activities, theater groups there now. The fire station has become a restaurant. 2 other things that we worked with the state and the town. When the state was looking to build a new district court, it used to be in the Opera House. They were thinking of moving out of Derry altogether. And we said, no, we'd love to keep you in Derry, particularly in the downtown. So they built a new building where you see it today. Same thing with the municipal center. One of the master plans recommended that we build like a suburban office park in East Derry, and they were gonna move the library there, the town hall. I think there were like 2 other buildings, and it was like a campus, and a lot of people objected to that and said, the comment was, we need to keep it in downtown, because if we're gonna revitalize our downtown, maybe we need to keep these buildings in the downtown. There was a lot of back and forth. So they kept the municipal center today, what you see out there, a brand new building was built over 20 years ago. So that added to the revitalization efforts. And I think the other thing I remember, and he taught me, and he's since passed away, but there used to be a landscape architect named Rumit Airy from Portsmouth. And he helped us with what we call the streetscape plan. And he and his wife started market days, years ago in Portsmouth. Rumit said, and he was from Estonia. So he came from Europe and came to America and taught us planning. He said, if you move your downtown, if you move your courthouse and your municipal center and the library out of the downtown, he said, in his opinion, it sends a bad message to say, well, you're not even investing in your own downtown. How do you want people to help you support the businesses? So he said, my recommendation would be to keep it there. And the second thing he did with us, he did a streetscape plan for us, and he said, work with public service. So when you come into downtown Derry for a few blocks, I'm sorry to the people behind me if you can hear me. They said, bury the overhead wires. So we worked with public service, similar to what Manchester did on Elm Street. We put a streetscape plan in. We did some tree planting. We did the brick sidewalks, or the red stamped, I should say. And then we found some old lights that were from the MSK Milliard. They looked like those old railroad lights that you see. So that kind of was the first step. And his comment was, if you show the public investment in your downtown, the public sector will follow. And little by little, it's starting to happen. And Dave Karen contended there's potential. Bev Donovan's here too, that there's some potential redevelopment in the downtown and Abbott Court. That will be a major changer in the downtown. And so that's been a highlight. I've enjoyed that. As far as things, I've seen it all. We had cell tower controversies back in the 90s. That initial cell tower was around 93 that you see up the highway. No one had phones back then, just a few people did. So we had that we had to deal with, and then we had adult businesses we had to deal with, and then we had, now it's like ADUs. We had zoning issues, obviously. Planning board rewrote our regulations. I'm trying to think of things that we've seen at all in terms of Jeff Moulton. He's done a lot of good work, and I've had a good relationship with Archibald and the Londonderry Planning Board. We go back and forth and exchange stuff. I just wanted Sylvia, Nate, Cam. I hope I didn't forget others. Jacob, I knew, and Zach and others, and Suzanne and the newer members, but always had a good relationship with the Planning Commission. Other things I'm trying to think, we got support for the town council years ago. We put some money in to do master plans. Southern Hampshire Plan did some transportation plans for us. And the first one I ever worked on was 1985. Southern Hampshire Planning Commission did a traffic study. It's called the Regional Transportation Plan. Back then, they recommended 2 exits on 93. They said one, they called it 3A, right on the Windham-Derry line, and then the other one was exit 4A, just north of what you see. So what's 1985, 39 years later, you finally see that exit happening. No one ever thought it would happen. It's finally happening. I will not be here for it, but it happens. People, it's controversial. I'm not denying that. There are a lot of, even to this day, there are political people. But then the interesting thing, we've had both Republican governors and Democrat governors across the board support the exit. They look at it as economic development for Derry and Londonderry, as well as to help the traffic. The other thing I worked on, which I'm kind of proud of, with a whole bunch of people, again, the commission was extremely helpful. We have the Derry Rail Trail. The same thing happened back in the 80s. The railroad bed used to come through the town. When I was here, the tracks were still there. The trains stopped coming up to Derry, but you could still see the rails were there. And so when the Boston and Maine Railroad sold the property in 1986, the town purchased it. Then we said, we're going to do 2 things. We give some of the business owners in downtown Derry the option to purchase the property. So both Benson's Hardware, Derry Feed, the Evans family bought some of the land to expand the businesses. And then we just step by step, we started to do the rail trail. We did what we called the inner loop in the downtown. We connected some of the schools. We had a Pathways, a bike trail group that we worked with. They were all volunteers, a great group. And we connected some of the schools with the downtown business area, the courthouse, the town hall, a couple of the town parks. And then as the funding became available through CMAQ programs at the federal level years ago in the DOT, we got the money to extend the trail south to the Windham line that you see today. And then northbound, and then the most recent leg with the help of the commission, we got funding from the last gap, which will be from Hood Pond to the Londonderry line, and that'll get that rail trail all through our area, hopefully through Londonderry to up to the airport. And then to the Mass line, so that's been a highlight. I don't know what else, I'm kind of just talking here, so if you want to ask me questions, but I don't know what else. In terms of like land use, we try to keep it up to date on all the different regulations you have to have. You know, the new thing now is the ADUs, accessory dwelling units, we allow those. We're working on a workforce housing project, that's in the works, the plan would see that later this year, so I think that will be a good project for the downtown. It's a block off the main street. It takes an old shoe factory that we purchased, the town got by default, I should say, by taxes. We tore the mill down, it's a vacant lot, it's 2 blocks off the main street, it's on water and sewer. It's an old neighborhood like some of the inner neighborhoods you see here to revitalize it, and it'll be a nice workforce housing project there someday. Trying to think what else. Worked with the schools over the years on their facilities committees. John, help me, or David, what other things have we worked on over the years? Trying to think, and I want to help, single out Cam Perlman. Cam helped with the survey on our last master plan, so that was very helpful, Cam, I appreciate that, as all commissioner. Day 2 on the rail trail, on our TAP applications, so. And, I don't know, what else?
Come on,
Yeah,
questions, comments,
Yeah,
George?
he put his hand up.
I think John had wanted to
Okay.
say something.
John?
One of the things that he's not saying at this point in time, but some of his uniqueness after 40 years within planning, especially in the town of Derry, his relationship with all the developers, the engineers, and even more so, the abutters that are very unhappy when certain projects come into town. And he's been able to take his relationship with these people, and as chairman, as David Benny says the same thing, as, oh my God, we're gonna have 50 people here tonight. It's gonna be crazy when we open the public hearing. And so as we move through the minutes, dealing with regular work, that George would be up there and take all the abutters, take all the developers, they would go into a separate room. And then we call a public hearing, finally, he gets up and comes forward. And you sit there and say, what's going on? So he was able to work things out even before they even occurred within the planning. So that's one of the key things that George has brought through it. Many, many years that I've been in the planning board down there. We've got to appreciate what they do behind the scenes before it even gets to them. So he's been phenomenal in that. So I thank you.
It's on the up and up too, we're not doing anything. I got in trouble though once recently.
But
Yeah, we had one official say, what are they doing in that side conference room? The doors are open, so it's a training room, but they thought we were doing things and making decisions ahead of time. And I said, no, it's just, you have a big crowd, you can look at the plan ahead of time, so it's helpful. And then everybody comes back in the room, so the abutters are still there. They have the chance to ask questions, but the other thing, John reminded me that we like doing it there, and I think other committees are doing it. It's been great exercises. We have a thing called technical review committee. The state statutes allow communities to do that. So on Friday mornings, we did it many years ago. We have a technical review committee. So when all developers come into the town, we set up a process. And I think that's one of the things that we've done really well at. We invite all the players. We have a representative from the police department, fire, public works, code enforcement, health, economic development. And we kind of go through the plan literally in the technical part, and then the plan board looks at the plans, but that helps a lot to get you through that process. I'm not saying we rubber stamp everything, but a lot of the things we can work on in the weeds through the staff level. So when it gets to the plan board, they see a good plan, it's signed off by the departments. We have a great conservation commission. We defer to them if they want to see the plan as well. So, that's been something, and the plan board's been great too. They've done a good job.
I think, George, you transcend the period of time when planning was non-existent in most communities. You had the old guard like the Ben Adams or the George Grinnell. In my town of Windham, we had some old time people. What do you want to do planning for? To now it's influenced by the developers, the people in town, it's broadened, and then now the legislature and the federal government. So you're a classic example of doing the art of planning, but also working with the politics of planning. And it's in some areas it can be so toxic and so many subjects now controversial. But you and like our colleague from Salem who succeeded Russ Moldoff from Salem, who's another long-term planner. You were very successful in doing that. I came to you almost 25 years ago with the outrageous concept of restoring passenger rail service to New Hampshire. Why would we want to do something like that? But anyway, you were very considerate. Thank you. And I'll shut up now. Anyone else would like to make a comment?
I have a question for Gary Schnackenberg from Francistown. Hi, Gary. Very different community from Derry. As you step away from this, I'm curious as to what you see as a challenge or concern involving planning for our communities moving forward without.
I think, it's different now, like Peter alluded to, we didn't have, and Sylvia and I talked about this, but there was no social media back then. I mean, we didn't have computers, literally, we didn't have, our meetings are live on cable now, we didn't have any of that stuff. So people still had to come into town hall. Joanne Duffy, who I've known for many years, and Becky Hebert, you still had to come in and talk to people. I try not to take things personal, that's just my personality, I do. But when you see the stuff on social media, that's a challenge of, you get criticized, and there's also good stuff too, but I think that's a challenge because of what it's really doing. It's scaring people to get two things, in my opinion. I mean, I have a great planning board member. We just got 2 new members as alternates last week. People are afraid to go on the boards because of some of the criticism, and I say abuse that you have to take, whether it's publicly, I mean, it's gotten bad the last 3-4 years when people in the back of it, when they shout at you more and they yell and I want to be heard, and that it never used, we used to have like a joke, like a couple of characters back then, they'd be old time, like Peter said. But you'd kind of laugh at them, but now it's different, and it's a challenge to get people on the boards. And I'm older now, I'm in my 60s, but when I was 25, there was a lot of younger, Jacob is great, he's younger, and it's tough to get the younger folks in the planning profession interested because they don't want to deal in the public sector what we go through. We can do other things now. So it's encouraging, but that's a challenge between getting board members and getting the planners in the field. And I think in my town, like being the southern part, we've always been under pressure, and Dave Karen knows, and Bev and Liz know, there's a lot of projects that Dave and John in the pipeline for development because we're right on 93 near the Mass line. That just continues to come up, even though Derry doesn't have a lot of land left. So there's that pressure there.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. Sometimes you just say, I don't need this anymore, you know. I'm a positive person, but it's a challenge. And now what I see, and Andrew from Chester and Sandown, we're seeing the smaller towns Auburn around us. That's being pushed out. So Auburn particularly, and Chester and Sandown too, they're getting more stuff now because they're leaving Derry and Londonderry to go to these smaller towns like Francistown.
Okay.
You're gonna see more development.
I'm going to be, one last question. I hate to be a downer.
No.
I also have to keep the meeting going. So go right ahead. Okay.
So are you looking for any retirement or volunteer jobs now that you're retired?
I told Kevin Shepherd I know Kevin too. I jokingly, I would take a break. I'm taking a break a little bit, but the town council, a couple of members did say, give yourself a year off and maybe go back and play more next year. I need a break a little bit, Jeff, but maybe down the road. I live in Derry, so we'll see. But, so I talked a lot. So Peter, are we on schedule?
Okay.
Oh, we have
David Priest out.
we have at least 15 minutes.
We do, okay.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Usually I'm being called on letting the meeting go.
No, we purposely scheduled this as,
Wonderful, thank you.
George.
Hello, for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm David Priest and I used to work here. And I had the pleasure of working with George for about 13 years. He was always very professional, very honest and forthright, and it was a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. And it's mutual. You're really good at working with you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Questions, comments?
Peter,
Yes, Nate.
I would just like to note that George has also served as the longtime chairperson of the CART Board of Directors. and was instrumental in forming CART as a public transportation service in the town of Derry in partnership with Londonderry and Salem and Hampstead, Chester. So I don't think a lot of people can say that in New Hampshire, that they were instrumental in the formation of a new public transportation service, which now we sort of, it's viewed as an essential service in the communities for getting our senior population to medical appointments and dialysis and pharmacy and adult day programs, and senior center programs. But that didn't exist. George and some key partners throughout those 5 communities worked together and formed what is now known as CART, and which has been providing service for many years in the town of Derry and beyond. So I just wanted to acknowledge George's contribution to the development of public transportation in the region and its many years of service on the CART board of directors. So thank you for that, George, and thank you for all you've done.
That's a good group to be with, and the other side, you're helping people, especially like they said, the people that don't have the ability to get rides to places and seniors like disabled and medical appointments. So that you that's the nice side of the job. You get to see that, so that's good. But Becky too, Becky, I won't say how long, but Becky started in Wyndham when I met you, Becky. She was in planning at the time.
I was in Wyndham.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And George did something that I thought was very impressive with Al Turner, who was my boss at the time. He hosted a joint meeting of the 2 communities planning boards, which is allowed by statute, but rarely done.
Yeah.
And I personally have never been to another joint meeting where you try to bring 2 groups together in that judicial capacity. So that was my first memory of meeting George and working with him face to face. And ever since then, he's been a wonderful resource, mentor to many, many families. I didn't see someone stay that long because it is a field that has a high level of burnout, because planners do a lot for their towns and we really do a lot.
Thank you, Becky. I appreciate that. And it's mutual too. We've had a good relationship. And I want to acknowledge Rick Sawyer too. Rick and I knew each other. I know Rick started in Nashville, Rick, right? When I met you, I think.
Yeah, it's 27 years ago, something like that, 25 years ago, but Becky said a lot of things I would say, and as have others, but the fact that, you for the regional planning, that you've always took that seriously too, and like leading the TAC team, and as new people came in and showed them the ropes on TAC here and how it was important, not just to serve your community, but the region. You're a model for other planners.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. So
What I think is so unique about this, it's not a memorial service per se. What a great guy you were. It's actually a service, a celebration that where we can tell you what we really think of you.
You're on the right side of the ground.
Idea. I had nothing to do with this.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna say, I didn't realize you lived in Derry. So have you lived in Derry?
Can I give you some advice as a young person, if you're out there, and I mean this, if I have to give one word of advice, probably don't do it, because I've had a great career, but if I had to look back, you can't get a break from it. I mean, and Russ Moldorf from Salem, the planning, he lives in Salem and works for the town. You're on the weekend and you're driving around and you see things and you say, I can't get a break from this. So when my family comes from Rhode Island and friends come out of town, with all due respect to Jerry, we purposely go out of town on the weekends to go to other places to go to eat or whatever, because I go to places and they meet people meanwhile, but I go have a beer or something and be like, hey, George, how you doing? I want to talk about something. No, it's Saturday night. Dave knows the Italian restaurant Sabatino's in downtown Derry. They would come up to me with friends at the bar on a Saturday and say, I want to talk to you about a development. I'm like, no, I'm here having a beer.
George, we can't forget, we have the people in the room, but we have people that are calling in. Is there anyone that is calling in that would like to comment on George, how wonderful or awful he is? No.
I'm seeing
We have Donovan.
Liz is there.
Raised your hand.
I'm sorry, I have my back to you.
Please go right ahead.
So I just want to say that as probably the person who had the most benefit of George, I have to say that George is probably one of the purest professionals that I have ever had the pleasure to work with, and I work with a lot of them. His professionalism, his dedication to his community, to his, just to everything that he does, his volunteerism. He's a true role model of what a good planner should be, and he is. And he is just, on top of that, the most marvelous person we've ever met. So I just want to say, thank you, George. You have done so much for everybody. And I'm glad that we had an opportunity to honor you today.
Thank you.
And
I'll see you, you'll be back. I'll see you at the end of August for a few days.
yeah, Bev Donovan.
Yeah, so it's all, it's worked out.
Just probably 2010 or so, I started transitioning into economic development. I had gone back for a master's degree and actually spent some time over at SNHPC under David Priest. Hi, David. Interning at an old age. But while I was doing that, I was working as a commercial real estate broker, and my territory was dairy. So I would often come in and pick George's brain and talk to him about, what was going on and how do I do this or that. And it was always very helpful. And I probably scared him one day when I said, George, there's a what's the name of it? Main Streets meeting out in Rochester. This poor guy doesn't know me from just coming in. I dragged him to that meeting. I think he even drove the car and probably scared the wits out of him. But he's always been so open to do things like that. And that was long before I ever worked with him. So George, you've been a resource. You've been great to work with. And I'm happy I had the chance to work with you professionally. And we're going to miss you around here.
Thank you, Bev. Appreciate it. It's been good. Linda and Bev too. They're a team with economic planning. So thank you. I've had both of you have been great, and Liz and Bev, you'll be fine. And but thank you. Yeah, it's been good. And Dave Cameron too. He's been supportive of planning. Like I said, he's one of the best administrators in my career. So.
So George, once you retire, will you be available for consulting in Sabatinos?
It's Sabatinos only. So I go to, so I get interfere. I gotta go to all of them. Gary's got more restaurants, which is a good thing. So.
Well, you can come to Wyndham and, diversify.
I go to Bedford and Manchester too. I'm not selective. Salem.
Oh, yeah.
Additional comments from those calling in? I'll go right ahead.
Hi, Cam Coleman. I work for the commission. I came here as an intern while David was the executive director, and bright-eyed out of college. I just want to say thank you, George, for all the years that you let me pick your brain, so to speak. You don't know how many emails I've sent asking to pick your brain. You've always gone above and beyond to help me. So thank you.
Thank you. Anytime. Sorry. Yeah, day two. You guys have been great. Yeah, not evening. When you get the brain cells, there's a few of them left. Again, it's been great. And Nate, like I said, Suzanne and Canoe and Linda too. I want to thank Linda more. She's been excellent. Linda, thank you all the years.
Yeah. So,
Sylvia too.
pleasure.
So. I've known you for your Exeter days too, I think, right?
Yeah, probably.
That far back.
Yeah.
Yep. So thank you.
So George, where all the bodies are buried, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, the joke was, somebody said to me last week, it's stupid to say this, but I could write a book because after 40 years, I've seen it all. And the joke was you could write a book to all the different things you've seen. And then most of it's been good. So I won't give the names away.
How are we for time?
We're very good with time.
Okay. Additional comments, questions? Anyone calling in that would like to comment?
Somebody. Adam has his hand. No, that's not.
No, that's just the mouth.
That's the curtain.
Oh, okay.
That looks like
Yes.
Just like that goes to my son. I said, everybody else has said, as a younger planner, I say that being 10 years older than George was when he started, planning in New Hampshire can be pretty isolating. And, we talk about Ross Mold was in Salem for 39 years. And he started 6 months after George beat him. Also expected to retire before he did. And, lasted him. So that's impressive. But, one benefit for me as a younger planner to have people like Ross Moldoff and George to bounce ideas off of, especially when you just have smaller planning departments. So a lot of times it can feel pretty overwhelming. It's, you know, pretty, motivating, I guess, to know that, you know, George was able to do it 40 years. Ross was able to do it almost 40 years. So, and it's great. George, I look forward to working with Liz and Gary, who we've worked with, you know, between Salem and Derry. And it's been a great benefit for Southern New Hampshire. Planners of George. Thank you. Should take my appreciation.
Well, this will be just one of many celebrations for George. I just wanted to get in the first big celebration. So thanks for everybody being here today, and
This was great.
yeah, thank you.
I think we. On that item, and then we're gonna break for a cake.
Yeah, one more agenda item. Nate will take us through the next item, and then we're gonna do a little break because we have cake and ice cream for George as well. So if you want to stay for that, and there's also pizza still, I think maybe out there.
Today we'll be talking about Southern New Hampshire fiscal year 23-26 TIP amendment. That's not sexy.
Make it exciting.
Yes. Well, I don't really know how to follow that. That was great. Thank you so much again, George. That was a wonderful reminiscence and great to hear everybody's stories. Thank you. All right. I'm gonna hide this meeting control. I will try to make this as painless as possible, recognizing that I just followed such a great speaker and topic. We are embarking upon TIP amendment number 6, and I want to introduce TIP amendment number 6 to you today. And the project changes that you will see in TIP amendment number 6. We talk about a lot of different transportation planning programs and plans, TIP and 10-year plan and long-range plan. I showed this slide at the beginning of every TIP amendment. We are talking today about the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program. And those are the projects that are moving forward in some phase, either engineering, right-of-way, or construction in the next 4-year period. So these are the projects we're talking about today are the farthest along in the project development process. They're the closest to construction. In some cases, they're already under construction. We do the TIP as a federal requirement. Any project that has federal funds expended on it must be included in our TIP. But in New Hampshire, the TIP is effectively the first 4 years of the 10-year plan. We have a unique state requirement in New Hampshire under RSA 228.99 and RSA 240, where we do a 10-year plan. That's unique. You won't find that in other states. It's something that we do in New Hampshire, looking out at that 10-year period. So effectively, the TIP is the first 4 years of the 10-year plan, although we update the TIP much more often than the 10-year plan because the projects are changing constantly based on updated estimates and changing conditions. So we're talking about the TIP today. We're talking about projects being amended. This is the 6th amendment of the fiscal 23 to 26 TIP. So every change we're talking about today occurs between now and fiscal year 2026. We will be releasing TIP amendment number 6 on Monday, July 8th for a 10-day public comment period. We will hold that 10-day comment period will run until Friday, July 19th, and we will hold a public hearing to consider adoption of a TIP amendment number 6 at next month's meeting on July 23rd. So you are seeing a sneak preview today of the project changes that will be in TIP amendment number 6. The full TIP amendment document will be in your next meeting packet in advance of that July 23rd hearing. What are the changes? We have a local bridge project on Griffin Mill Road in the town of Auburn. This is technically an addition to the TIP, although it's not a new project. This project is an existing project. It happens to currently be programmed beyond the TIP horizon. It will be moved to be programmed in for construction in fiscal year 2026. So that means it's coming into the TIP from outside of the TIP. So it will be included as a new project in the TIP for that reason. There is a new project in the town of Bedford for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. This is the replacement of electric vehicle chargers at Whole Foods in Bedford. This is a new project in the TIP. The state of New Hampshire applied for under a small federal discretionary program called the Electric Vehicle Charger Reliability and Accessibility Accelerator Program. Try to say that 5 times fast. We call it RAA for short. So New Hampshire DOT is a discretionary awardee from the Federal Highway Administration under this RAA program to replace the EV chargers at Whole Foods in Bedford. This is a partnership, I believe, with EVgo is the provider of those chargers. So this is a new federal award and on a discretionary basis. And so that will be going into the TIP as a new project. There is a local bridge project in the town of Bedford. It's on Beals Road over Babusick Brook. It's actually right at the town line with the town of Merrimack. So it's listed as Bedford Merrimack. This is increasing engineering and construction phase funding in fiscal year 25 to reflect the current cost estimate for the project. Another new project on a discretionary basis. This is a project in Manchester, downtown pedestrian infrastructure improvements on Elm Street. This will be a new project in the TIP. It is a recent congressionally designated or congressionally directed spending award, what we call a CDS award. In other words, it's quote unquote an earmark project that is coming directly from the congressional appropriations process for pedestrian improvements on Elm Street. So we're adding that project into the TIP as a new project, as it's a new congressional award to the city of Manchester. 2 local bridge projects in the town of New Boston, each having the same changes. The first is on Greg Mill Road over the south branch of the Piscataquag River. It will see increased funding in all phases of the project. Engineering and right-of-way funding will move from 25 to 26. Now, that's not a delay in the project. The project will be constructed in the same timeline. However, the engineering and right-of-way funds for this project are state funds. And so the TIP will reflect the state fiscal year in which those funds will be obligated, which in this case will be technically state fiscal year 26. But there's no change to the construction timeline for the project. And it's the exact same story also on Tucker Mill Road over the middle branch of the Piscataquag River. Increase in funding for all phases of the project and moving engineering and right-of-way phase funding to reflect the state funding that will be obligated in state fiscal year 26. There's a new statewide program for overhead sign structures. It's going to be called the OHSS program. New Hampshire DOT has identified the need for a new statewide program to deal with overhead sign structure rehabilitation or replacement. It will be funded, it's proposed to be funded at $1 million per year in federal surface transportation block grant funding for both fiscal 25 and 26. I would expect that this program will become permanent and be an annual program. Overhead sign structures are, we see them every day, but they are an important part of the transportation system, and rehabilitating and replacing those sign structures is an endeavor that needs to be planned for in the TIP. So we'll see a new statewide program for that.
Would you be changing the mileage on these signs?
No, no, these are just dealing with the actual structures that hold the sign up. No, this is not in any way related to the renumbering for milepost based exit numbers. There's a statewide program to resurface tier 2 roadways. These are basically the larger arterial roads that are not the interstate system or the limited access system, but these are called tier 2 roadways. A statewide program, typically largely administered at the DOT district level. So most of the roads in our region would be under an umbrella contract with DOT District 5. But this will see a substantial increase in funding for to pave more roads under this tier 2 resurfacing program. This additional funding is coming from Federal Highways annual redistribution. So long story short, on an annual basis, there are certain Federal Highway Administration Highway Trust Fund programs that don't get obligated to their limit of funding each year. And the difference in the obligation funding versus the limit in those programs is bundled up and redistributed to each of the 50 states in the union. And New Hampshire benefits from that each year. Those additional redistribution funds are largely going to be put into this paving program. So this is a process that happens each year, but when you see the difference here is about $30 million in this statewide program. So if you're wondering where did that money come from, it came from redistribution. We'll have a change to, this is a little bit in the weeds, and I'll try to make it as plain language as possible. In the 10-year plan process, 2 years ago, it was approved to transfer about $3 million a year of Title 23 highway funding to Title 49 transit funding. And that mechanically happens through a transfer of surface transportation block grant funds to federal transit. And that is to support transit services around the state. Our region, as well as all of the other regions of the state, benefit from these transferred funds. In part, that's what helps to fund, for instance, the CART nutrition shuttle and extended dairy service in the town of Derry, for instance, is partially supported by these transferred funds. We will be eliminating the fiscal 24 transfer line item, and that's a technical amendment. That transfer has taken place. So we're going to eliminate the line item where those funds are programmed on the highway side, and they will be coming into the transit side through future minor amendments. So to avoid double counting, we strike that line item whenever that transfer has taken place. And that's it. That is, that was an interesting and thrilling follow-up to what was a great presentation by George, but I'm happy to answer any questions about what you will see in tip amendment number 6, if there are any. Otherwise, you will see the draft amendment in your packets next month.
Questions in-house for Nate? Now, see Nate, questions for those calling in for Nate? Now, see Nate, thank you very much.
Welcome.
And the next item is fiscal year 2027, the 36 10-year plan solicitation.
I will be very brief here. I will just note that we are about to embark on our regional solicitation process for the next 10-year plan. And it's hard to believe we're talking about the 27 to 36 10-year plan. But all of your communities will be seeing solicitation correspondence from us soon, asking for your project submissions for consideration in that 10-year plan process. So stay tuned on that front. I would also note that the commission has put out a request for qualifications for on-call engineering services to help us scope and do cost estimates for the projects that will be coming forward in the fiscal 27 to 36 10-year plan. That RFQ is closed. We've received 4 proposals from engineering firms, and our review working group will be meeting tomorrow. And I'd like to acknowledge George for that work group to help us review those engineering proposals. So thank you, George. And that's it on the 10-year plan update.
Okay.
We're gonna take a 10-minute, you can adjourn. Motion to
Can I adjourn?
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adjourn the MPO, please?
Budget adoption. That's. for
Yes,
next time.
that's under the
That's
regular
not an
planning
MPO.
commission meeting.
Oh.
Is there a second to, all those in favor? I'm gonna assume it's unanimous. Thank you. There is cake and ice cream out in the library.
Sorry, people online. No cake and ice cream for you, but we'll be back soon.
So how long do we need to say, have you talked to Tim at all about this Thursday night meeting? How late? Well.
Zach, are you panning just to make sure we can see the ice cream really well? We wouldn't want to miss seeing it.
Yeah, you got, you want.
This is, that's right.
So what's going on at Bedford?
So he submitted the same thing to us. And Scott.
George, I need you. Where is it in the Bedford process?
It's going to be July. Second week of July. And
Do they have everything they needed?
well, this letter, the rest is Bedford. I don't trust that. I don't know whether it's saying something going on. I want to do it. There's a lot line adjustment and a T and then a conceptual. Okay, so the lot line adjustment. Their house ended up on another. Yeah, that was lot, so that's. And they don't have enough frontage. But you're not changing. But it's not changing, so they shouldn't need it. And the other one is. The other one is just. Right, now where they want to go down, they're closing the warehouse. And the only problem with that one is. And they never, we're in a tier.
fiscal meeting. Sylvia, will you do could I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 23rd?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any corrections or omissions?
I just noticed that the minutes say March 26th.
Yes, that was pointed out,
Oh,
but I
okay.
didn't catch it in time to correct it on the version out, but
That,
we are aware of that. Thank
That's okay, good. Any other additions or corrections? Okay, Sylvia, take it away.
All right, from Auburn, we still have Chris Sterndale.
Here.
Thank you. And minutes,
Aye.
good. From Bedford, we have Bill Jean.
Present, yes.
Excellent. And let's see, do we still have Dan? Yes, we do. Dan Heath. His phone is here, but he is not. From, that's a weird echo. Echo. From Kenya, we have Ron Laverdure. See, anybody else? All right, now I've muted everyone to reduce the reverberation. So when it's up to you, you just need to unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Okay.
This is Dan Heath from Bedford, excuse me. I am present, abstain.
All right, thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Let's see, we hit Candia. How about Chester, Andrew Haddock?
Yes.
Thank you. And Deb Munson?
Here and yes.
Thank you. All right. From Deerfield, we have Fred McGarry
present and yes.
and Errol Rhodes.
Here, yes.
From Derry, Jeff Moulton,
Here and yes.
John O'Connor,
Here and abstain.
Richard Tripp.
Here and yes.
Thank you. From Francistown, we have Gary Schneckenberg
Here and yes.
and Al Eisenberg. Yeah.
Here and yes.
Goffstown, Joanne Duffy. Here and abstain. Barbara Griffin. Here and yes. And Jacob LaFontaine. No one today from Hooksett, but from Londonderry in-house, we have Art Rugg
I'm here and yes on the minutes.
and Deb Levens online. Deb's still here.
I think she might have said that she's cooking, so she might step away.
All right, and Brian. Still here.
Present and abstain.
Oh, yes, thank you, Brian. From Manchester in-house, we have Dan O'Neill
Here and yes.
and Eliza Augusta. Say that right, Eliza? Good. And Kevin Shepherd.
Here, I'm an alternate, but Peter's not here, so I know if I can vote, I
You-
can abstain anyway.
The three of you can vote today. New Boston, Mark Sunan.
Here and yes.
From Wyndham, we have Peter
Here and yes.
and Ed Lapointe.
Here and yes.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. The only agenda item is a review and consideration of the fiscal 25 budget. Nate, would you like to go over that?
Okay. I did put together a brief PowerPoint to hit the highlights of the draft budget. I'd like to thank our SNHPC Budget Committee and our Executive Committee for working with us to help put the draft budget together, which is in your packets. I'll hit the highlights here. I won't go excruciatingly line by line and highlight every change, but hopefully over the next few slides, you'll get a general sense of the budget. Both revenues and expenditures are up in the draft budget year over year with fiscal 24. We are seeing additional new projects come into the region. have called this historically the woodwork effect. Things we don't know about today that come out of the woodwork tomorrow, and we've had a number of projects come out of the woodwork over the last year, which is a good thing. Big picture, we are in the mid-cycle of our biggest funding contract, so we are entering the second year of our Unified Planning Work Program with New Hampshire DOT. We're entering the second year of our targeted block grant funding with New Hampshire Office of Planning and Development. And we're entering the second year of our Section 5310 transit contract. So we're sort of at the midpoint of our 2-year cycle in those key state contracts. We do have a multi-year project, the EPA Brownfields Assessment Program, and that will continue in fiscal 25. So big picture, those are in terms of our largest contracts, we're sort of at the midpoint of our 2-year cycle. Expense wise, we are budgeting to increase our staff to 14 with the addition of a new principal planner. That new principal planner will be starting with us next week. So we will be fully staffed at 14, and we will need all 14 of our staff to work as hard as possible to deliver the projects in this budget and work program. So we're going to have a staff of 14. Our health insurance costs are rising significantly due to factors beyond our control. We don't set health insurance rates. They're passed down to us, and we deal with them as all of your municipalities do. And on the horizon, we're looking at some potentially significant buildings and grounds type projects. Linda has been busy getting quotes for soffit painting. We know that there's some sort of water issue in our entrance vestibule that is going to need to be dealt with, and we don't fully know what the cost of that will be yet. And perhaps the most costly and pressing of all is we are looking at some potentially significant HVAC upgrades. Some of our AC units outside are older units that are dealing with refrigerant that has been discontinued, and there's a refrigerant leak somewhere in the system that we're in the process of having diagnosed. And so we do think that there are some HVAC costs along the way that we're going to see in fiscal 25. We will work closely with our building committee to evaluate contractor pricing and the like for any HVAC repairs. But yes, we do see some building issues on the horizon. Yeah.
Comment. I'm on a building committee in Brentwood State. Right now, HVACs are going minimum year out.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we're right now we have sort of an on-call arrangement with Denron Hall for kind of immediate HVAC repairs for sometimes we get, a valve goes and we get, dripping in the ceiling and things like that need to be dealt with immediately. They're diagnosing the source of our refrigerant leak. They've charged the system. They've got some sort of colorized luminescent dye or something where they'll be able to pinpoint the leak, and then once they determine where that is, they'll be able to give us a better handle on what needs to be replaced. But yes, they did say that some of these units have significant lead time. Errol?
Are all the concerns that you've just run through envisioned in the numbers you presented?
To the best of our knowledge, pending, contractor quotes. I mean, some of these things we don't fully know what the numbers are going to materialize to be yet. If the costs are higher than we've budgeted, we're fortunate. We do have reserves for a building and grounds reserve that we can dip into if necessary. That could potentially put us in a deficit budget situation if we go too high. But yeah, it'll depend on contractor pricing for some of these things. We don't fully know what that is yet, but that's our best guess, at least at this point. What's in the budget?
A slight surplus.
Yeah, I mean, it's a balanced budget. We put as much as we could into that line item to not go into a deficit situation, but have enough to be able to respond with contractor pricing. But if it goes higher, we do have a reserve that we can go into if necessary. In terms of municipal dues and local contracts, we did set, you all set as the commission back on September 26th of 23. You set our fiscal year 25 dues rate. It is level for the 5th consecutive year. So good job to everyone for controlling costs and making sure that we run as efficiently as possible. That dues rate will again be applied to the most current Office of Planning and Development population estimate for the community. So each community. So those vary up and down each year based on the estimate, but that's what we historically use as the best available population estimate for the communities. We do have some new local projects in this fiscal 25 budget. We are assisting the town of Auburn with circuit rider planning services. We're working on the town of Chester's master plan update. We are working with the town of Francistown on a natural resources inventory, and we are working with the town of New Boston on a road surface management system. So all of those are new local projects that you'll see in the fiscal 25 draft budget.
Hey,
Yes.
the dues that you collect in the town, typically what are the dues used for in the budget?
We use them for a few different things. So many of our state and federal contracts, including our Unified Planning Work Program, require non-federal funds to leverage those dollars. We use the dues for that. And then we also use the dues to respond to community needs and requests that aren't otherwise covered in one of our funding contracts. So general technical assistance to the communities, things that don't easily fall into a transportation or brownfields and the like. But the largest portion of our dues is used to leverage the ability to have Unified Planning Work Program funding and other funding sources on the state and federal side that benefit the communities. So it's a combination of both of those factors.
Thank you.
I mentioned before, we're at the midpoint of our 2-year contract cycle for most of our state and federal contracts. We are continuing to develop the hazard mitigation plan updates for Deerfield, Francistown, and Windham. That I believe Windham is close to the finish line. The other 2 are in progress right now, and that work will continue into fiscal 25. And then we also, in fiscal year 25, will start work on a new HUD-funded contract to update the regional comprehensive plan. All of the regional planning commissions have partnered on this particular contract. It is being led by the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. But under that contract, each of the regional planning commissions will have 3 years of funding to help support updates of the regional comprehensive plan. So that work will get underway in fiscal 25. In terms of other revenue, we do have a tenant downstairs, the Holy Cross Family Learning Center. We're anticipating no changes to their rent amounts or their tenancy to change over the course of the year. So that is level. The commission has been awarded $20,000 very recently from a private foundation, the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation, for implementation of pathways to play. You may remember previous commission meetings learning about the Pathways to Play program. This is finding safe and efficient ways for children to access play areas and playgrounds within our communities in the region. And that has been very well received by the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation, and they have awarded us $20,000 to continue and on implementation of that effort around the region. Suzanne Nienaber on our staff has been the lead on this effort, and much of the success of this grant is directly due to her efforts. So thank you, Suzanne. Interest revenue. Timing. As she walks back in, yeah. I was giving you kudos, Suzanne. You've been working on pathways. We have, due to the higher interest rates, we have seen interest revenue higher than we normally would on our operating and reserve accounts. To some extent, we expect that to continue in fiscal 25, although we recognize that those rates may ultimately start to decrease based on Federal Reserve actions. But right now, we are benefiting from interest revenue that we wouldn't normally see in normal well, what is normal in terms of interest rates, but we are seeing higher than we have in the previous years. On the expense side of the budget, overall salary and benefit costs up 7.1% year over year from the current budget. That in part is due to that staffing increase that I talked about, adding our new principal planner. I mentioned the health insurance costs that are out of our control. We also joined the New Hampshire Paid Family and Medical Leave program last year. And even though there's, I think I don't have the budget in front of me. I think the delta is like $3 year over year of costs in that program from fiscal 24 to 25. But this has been a wonderful program. Kudos to the state for setting it up. It covers things that would not be covered under our normal short-term disability program, ill family members and things along those lines that wouldn't otherwise be covered. So that's been a welcome addition to our offering of benefits. The contractor and consultant expenses. So much of our EPA brownfields program revenue is offset by corresponding consulting expenses. The actual work of doing phase 1, phase 2 environmental site assessments for contamination and to evaluate contaminated properties. We have a consultant. We went through a selection process last year and selected Crederi Associates. They are our current brownfields assessment consultant. So on the expense side, you'll see consulting expenses for that. That is largely offsetting some of the brownfields program revenue. We will also continue to have 4 subrecipients for Section 5310 funding. So you'll see on the revenue side, those $5310 that we administer, much of that is passed through to Manchester Transit Authority for the Goffstown Shuttle and the Hooksett Shuttle and the New Boston Demand Response Service, as well as CART's extended dairy service. Easter Seals of New Hampshire for demand response service in the greater Manchester area, Rockingham Nutrition Meals on Wheels for demand response service around the Vic Geary Center in Plastow and those communities, as well, and Caregivers, which is actually a program now of Catholic Charities for volunteer driver recruitment region-wide. So those have been our subrecipients in that program. We don't select the subrecipients. We simply act as the lead agency. We have what's called a regional coordinating council that meets and actually selects the projects that are funded through Section 5310 funds in the region. Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission simply acts as the lead agency to administer those funds and perform oversight of those 4 subrecipients. Other expenses, we are going to see computer and software expenses increasing. In part, that's due to continued increasing costs as software has moved to a subscription-based. Pretty much everything in terms of software is now subscription-based, and those subscription costs are going higher. But the more significant cost factor there is we're going to be investing in tip management software. So an actual commercial solution for our tip database, which will help us a lot in terms of staff time and efficiencies in developing our tip and tip amendments and tip minor revisions. That's actually going to be a cooperative purchase between the 4 MPOs. So we are partnering with our colleagues in Nashua, Rockingham, and Stratford on that purchase. And we're all very much looking forward to that tip software being procured and being put to use. So that is one of the things. And that cost of that software will be offset, but 90 cents on the dollar by our Unified Planning Work Program. So that is a reimbursable expense for transportation funding. We'll have a modest increase in audit expenses. Not to bore all of you, we are required to do what's called a GASB 75 actuarial valuation each year. That looks at our current staff, ages of our current staff, what our likely contributions or what our likely share of the New Hampshire retirement system's other post-employment benefits are. And so basically it's an actuarial valuation that our auditors use to create that particular section of our audit report. It is a requirement under the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So we we are budgeting accordingly for that actuarial evaluation. We do it every 2 years. We have also budgeted an in-person annual meeting in our unallowed indirect cost line item. And then, as I mentioned, the equipment maintenance, the building improvements that are likely on the horizon next year. I guess sort of in summary, we have had 6 consecutive years of positive financial positions in our audit. We are in a strong financial position. We have a sound general fund and fund balance. And through coordination with our executive committee, we have deployed some of that fund balance into 4 reserves. An operating reserve, what we call an infrastructure reserve, but we used to call it the buildings and grounds reserve, but is calling it infrastructure to cover a little bit more than just buildings and grounds. An accrued benefit liability reserve for accrued paid time off and other employment benefits that may be due to retiring employees or like, and as well as a vehicle replacement reserve because our commissioned Ford Explorer is still has some useful life left, but is getting older and is moving towards the end of its useful life at some point in the next couple of years. So we have started to reserve accordingly for that vehicle replacement. Overall, we are presenting a balanced budget and rest assured, welcome to review our audit reports on an annual basis, but we're fortunate to be in a sound financial position with good reserves going into this. And with that, I will happily answer any questions if there are any.
Questions in-house for Nate? Questions from those calling in for Nate? Okay, then, could I have a motion to accept the budget as presented by Nate?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Any additional comments, questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those calling in, okay, that's staff. All right. Those opposed? Those abstaining? It's in the affirmative.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Sylvia, do you want, or Linda, do you want to give an update on annual meeting?
We can probably both do it. I guess the most important thing is we've chosen a date and a time. It'll be during our normal MPO time on September 24th. So it's a Tuesday. It'll be the same time, 11:30, but it'll be at the Dairy Field. And we'll be getting information out soon as far as tickets. And do you want to talk about the topic or possible topic?
Oh, it's 5 after. We'll
Keep everyone in suspense.
we'll keep you in, so we're working, the general topic is climate impacts on New Hampshire's agriculture. I have contacted a lot of people and have not had a lot of luck. So stay tuned for that topic. We have had one successful person reach out, but after half a dozen tries, it's getting tricky, but, and if anyone has, other contacts for me on this topic, I'm open. And, but.
So more information soon, but just marking.
Yeah, mark your, a farmer is great. Mark your calendar and, so that's the September, what is it, the
24th.
24th?
Yeah.
Noon, 11:30 at the Dairy Field. So don't come here for pizza. Go to the Dairy Field, and I won't be here. I will be in Germany, so Nate will be hosting that for us and running the show, but I will be doing behind the scenes prepping for this meeting.
I'll be the same.
You're not going to zoom in.
It's not a Zoom event. Otherwise it would. I would. That's how dedicated I am. All right, I think we're all set. If
We have one last announcement from the chat.
Yes, Tammy.
There is currently a roadway safety action plan survey out through the Safe Streets for All grant program. The survey is open through July 14th. There's a link in the chat for all of you at home. And there are also postcards on the conference table if you'd like to take them back to your towns and help us spread the word. We would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, if you want to complain about if you're raising your fist while you're driving home, you can't believe about the traffic, do this survey. It's very satisfying. I did it yesterday.
Any additional questions, comments, topics that those present would like to discuss? Again, welcome to our new members from Candia, Ron Labrador, in Manchester, Eliza Augusta, and Kevin Shepherd. Thank you for joining us.
Please bring cake home.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
Chris.
So what about Congress? From your district?
Well, no, not right now.